Just perfect music every Sunday. It's really wonderful. Thank you, music team. Jane and Jeanette Brise picking songs, and Kate helping to sing, and also Karen helping to sing, so it's beautiful. So, conscious choice. I don't know, I put this on my calendar a couple months ago that I wanted to talk about conscious choice. And yesterday I had this awareness that Sonia's talk was about choosing too, and I thought, I better make sure I listen to her talk. But it was totally different. So the divine has a way to speak through all of us in its own unique and powerful way. As I was focusing on what I wanted to share today, a Bible story came to me, and it's actually probably one of my very favorite Bible stories. And the reason is when I was a licensed teacher and I was part of Unity in Marin many, many years ago, this would have been in like 1996 or something like that. So it was a long time ago, a few moons. Anyway, I was in charge of the ministers' 13-week sabbatical. We gave them a time to go away. And so we created this program on the 12 powers. And I had teachers from all over, even some from Unity School came and spoke and spent a week with us. But I put myself as the first speaker. And I had never given a Sunday talk before, so I was terrified. But I was supposed to talk on faith. So this is the Bible passage I picked, and that's why I think it's always been my favorite. And I think at first I was just going to tell it, but I think I'm going to read it because I think it's always kind of good to just hear the full complement of these words. So this is in Matthew 14. Jesus has just fed the 5,000, so it's been a big deal, right? It's a big deal. Just 5,000. So immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he dismissed them, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. And when evening came, he was there alone. But the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. Think of yourself being in the boat. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Do not fear." "Lord, if it is you," Peter said, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," Jesus said. Then Peter got down out of the boat and walked on the water to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." So it's a great story. It's a great metaphysical story for us, too. And, you know, if I were doing another talk, I'd do a whole metaphysical interpretation of this story. But I think it fits in so perfectly with what I want to talk about today, which is about making conscious choices in our life. And actually, my talk title, Conscious Choice, is also Who Chooses? So in doing some research, I found a really interesting a transcript of a talk given in 1981 by Eric Butterworth. I know some of you may not know, but Eric Butterworth was really one of the most prominent Unity ministers ever, ever, ever. He's written so many incredible books. Discover the Power Within You, which is a classic. Many, many other books. He had a church at Lincoln Center in New York City for many years, and he had a radio program. So this was a transcript from one of his radio programs in 1981. And I just want to read a segment of this because I think you're going to be surprised that life in 1981 was kind of like life in 1990, where are we? In 2025. I'm still back in the 90s. So this is from Eric Butterworth. So he was trying to point to what he thought would open the door of somebody's mind to understand and begin to embrace the unity principles. And he said this, I've concluded that it is simply this: you always have a choice. You always have a choice. There is no such thing as choiceless life. I want you to think about this. You may be living in trying times. You may be faced with a shaky economy that is out of your hands, but which is detrimental and has a detrimental effect upon your personal security. You may be an innocent bystander in a world of war, a society replete with inequities and injustices, and a community stricken with blight and depravity. But all of this is in the world out there. Perhaps there's little you can do to change it, to change conditions, or even to remove yourself from their influence. But you do have a choice, for life is consciousness. You live in a world of your thinking, a world of your mind. Things may happen around you, things may happen to you, but the only thing that really counts are the things happening in you, in your consciousness and in your mind. Your world, as far as you're concerned, is formed and shaped totally and completely by your attitudes and your feelings, by your consciousness. Such a powerful, powerful awareness that he's giving us. You know, and I thought, well, I could just stop right there and that would be a good talk and you could ruminate on that. But of course I can't, because it's me and I have to dig further, so I did a little more digging. You know, I was thinking about before I found this, I was thinking about the world that we're living in, and a lot of people are feeling kind of disenfranchised, that they really don't have the opportunity to do anything. And yet what he's talking about here is taking a look and seeing who's doing the choosing. Who is it that's doing the choosing? Is it the self that is rooted in fear, like those disciples who were in the boat? They were in the boat, which was giving them a sense of security, but the wind outside and the water were the conditions outside. And those disciples, like many people in the world today, were living from a place of fear consciousness. Or, you know, we have an opportunity to live from our higher self, where we're connected to a higher state of consciousness. And who was the one who was willing to take that on? It was Peter. You know, and Peter, metaphysically, Fillmore would say, Peter represents our faith, the very human faith that we have, because Peter not only stepped out of the boat when Jesus called to him, he was able to connect with higher consciousness, the Christ consciousness, but at the same time, he was in his humanness, he felt the wind and he probably looked down and he started sinking. So he represents that part of us, essentially, that has choice. It's interesting that we look at that, you know, and another thing Butterworth said was, the great need is not for more knowledge. We don't need to learn more. We don't need to amass more degrees, which I didn't get that memo early on. I just thought, you know, just have to keep grabbing and keep striving to get more information. What we need is more consciousness. We need to be more conscious of what's going on in our inner world. It's not a time to really be striving for more, and I think this is true for all of us right now. It's a time to deepen our awareness to who we are and what the capacity we have to make conscious choices in our lives. So one of the things that I think it's important for us to look at, because a lot of times we're really unconscious about the choices that we're making. We're doing it from a place of maybe past childhood issues that we had when we were kids. We learned that we needed to protect ourselves in a certain way, and so we created strategies of how we're supposed to show up in the world. You know, for some people that strategy is you just have to fight back. For other people the strategy might be to just, you know, totally freeze and become paralyzed. For other people it might be to leave. The fight, flight, or freeze is one of those kind of default reactive modes. It might be that we are making choices out of guilt or shame or a sense of deep despair that there's nothing that can be done. And all of these levels of creating choice, making conscious choices, are coming from, for many of us, a very emotional place. That's why the story of the disciples in the boat and Peter walking on water is really interesting metaphysically, because the water represents that sort of emotional place inside of us. And how often we can, just like Peter, we can think we're connected to something higher, and then we lose sight and we get caught up in those lower realms of consciousness. We get caught up in fear, we get caught up in a sense of guilt, or we get caught up in a need to please other people or to control a situation. So just becoming aware if any of those things are an aspect of the underlying reason why you're making choices in your life for anything. Because as Butterworth said, you always have a choice. It's important to be aware of these ways where we might not be making choices from the highest and the best, because in a sense, they're kind of like a little crack for us. It's like a way for us to see more deeply the truth of who we are and to actually pull those weeds out of the garden. So being unconscious is one thing, but being aware of what's going on down there is a really important part of the journey that we're on right now. And literally, just beginning to notice where we're making choices from, what we're choosing to be true about our world and about ourselves, that's a sort of a holy awareness. It's a holy awareness. So one of the things, we can look at is some of the ways we do this. And I was thinking, sometimes when we get in situations, especially around family, we can find ourselves being somewhere where somebody's saying something that they've said every single Thanksgiving, and it's not something you want to hear, and people are looking at their friends, because we all have been there, right? And what's the default mode for us? What do we choose? Do we choose to get angry? Do we choose to leave? Do we choose to have massive judgment about them? Just being aware of how we have these kind of habitual patterns, and they're built in oftentimes into the dynamic of the particular person, or, I just say Thanksgiving, and people are like, because that brings all that family stuff, right? So that could be one thing. The other thing is just simply choosing to be afraid, feeling this sense of insecurity, feeling a sense of instability, and making a choice to take action or to speak out of that place of fear. And I know a lot of people are feeling that right now. There's a lot of unrest happening in the world. There's financial unrest, there's political unrest, there's social, we're in that place of a lot of chaos happening in the world right now. But again, we can think of this story of being in the boat, because at some level that boat is meant to hold us, so you have that boat. And at the same time, we find ourselves like the disciples, where we're coming from a place of fear and not wanting to connect with the higher consciousness that's right there. We think it's a ghost. We interpret, and that's part of what Butterworth is saying. It's how we perceive things. So getting more and more clear about how our unity teachings really support us in not only getting out of the boat, but staying out of the boat. Although for most of us, we're going to dip like Peter into the stinking thinking, sinking down there every once in a while. It's just part of our human nature. But, the story, this Bible story, really reminds us that there is another aspect of our consciousness. We have the conscious mind. Fillmore talks about this. He talks about the 3 levels of consciousness. And I know I've talked about this in other Sunday messages. We have the conscious mind that thinks it's making the choices. And then we have this unconscious Fillmore will talk about it as the subconscious, this area where we don't really know what's there, but all the past memories of our life are stored in this underground layer that we might not have access to with our conscious mind. Then we have what's called the superconscious, and Fillmore aligns the superconscious and says this is the Christ consciousness. This is the divine consciousness. My minister in Marin used to call it the living spirit of truth. You know, it's alive, and it's not something outside of us. It's something that is within each one of us. And the story clearly is talking about that too. We look at the metaphysics of a story, and we see that every aspect of the story is an aspect within us. So the story is not talking about a Jesus who's somebody outside of us that Peter's connecting with. The story is saying there's a quality within you, this Christed quality, this divine quality, this living spirit of truth within you that you can connect with that. It's calling you every moment to connect with that higher consciousness. And that's what the awareness of the choices that we make, when we say who's choosing, I think unity has an amazing way of helping us understand how we have this opportunity in our life, rather than choosing fear, rather than choosing guilt, rather than living from a place of shame or disconnection from that higher consciousness. We have an opportunity to choose this higher, to choose the better part. I think that was part of interesting story last week with Martha. A very different story, but a very similar thing, to choose the better part. Fillmore talks about this. He says the total consciousness of man is the consciousness, subconsciousness, and superconscious phases of mind working as a whole, as a unity. The superconscious mind is man's only sure guide through the maze of the creative process. Well, I'm going to say the creative process is called living your life, because we are always evolving and co-creating that life by the choices we make moment to moment. The superconscious mind is man's only sure guide through the maze of the creative process. By trusting to the infallibility of this guide, we open ourselves to the inspiration of the Almighty. So it's connecting us, our connection to higher consciousness, to the Christ mind, to Christ consciousness, to the divine within, to the living spirit of truth. Name it whatever you want to name it, that's in you. It's an inner connection that you have, connects you to that field of all possibilities, where all things exist at the same time, where there's no time and there's no space. It connects us into that infinite explosion of the moment. It's a super powerful thing for us to be. That's why it's called super consciousness. It's not just higher consciousness. It's super consciousness. And this is what Fillmore talked about all the time. I mean, it's such an important thing for us to really embrace and really be aware of. And it's not just a kind of mystical idea. It's literally the living truth that lives and moves and has its being in each one of us. And for us to be able to not only have awareness of it, but to actually make that the standard by which every choice we make is guided. It's a guide. It's a guide for us. I keep looking over here. I'm going like, Peter's this is where the boat's headed this way. Jesus is over there. And Jesus basically is a guide for Peter to be able to move out of fear and to step into his faith. We have that living spirit of the superconscious mind as a guide for us to inspire us to whatever it is that we're called to do in our lives, whether it's dealing with a health challenge or whether it's dealing with something in our career where we're looking to co-create something else in our life, whether it's dealing with a challenge in a relationship. We have that guide of superconsciousness. That infallible guide is what Fillmore would say. And I thought it was such a powerful thing, because the more we can become aware of this and really anchored in Butterfield's teaching that we always have a choice, There's no such thing as a choiceless life. We're always making a choice. We may not be aware that we're making a choice, and we may not be aware from what level we're making that choice, but we always are making a choice. I think it's so powerful for us to think, back to that question of who chooses? Who chooses? Is it the fearful self that's choosing? Is it the one that thinks there's a scarcity, there's not an abundance in the world? Is it the one that feels isolated and separate? Is it the guilty self? Is it the one who's ashamed? Is it the self that's just trying to survive? Or is it the self that's centered in the awareness that the presence and the power of the divine is within me and you in every moment? Who's choosing? Who is choosing? And so this is kind of an important thing for us to be aware of, because we're not talking about surrendering. It's not about surrendering to any sort of passive thing. It's more like a partnership with an aspect of who we are that for a time we've forgot about. We got in the boat and the waves came and we just forgot that was a possibility for us. Or we thought it was a ghost. Because don't you sometimes have that feeling? You might be in an issue, something might be going on in your life, and you get an idea that seems kind of like a wild hair, like, that's kind of crazy, why would, and you dismiss it, right? But that was just exactly the thing that would have taken you in your next step in your life. And we do that, we second guess ourselves. That's Peter, that's Peter stepping out and then sinking down again. So it's important for us to be aware of this, and that it's essentially this connection that we have with superconscious mind is not something passive, but it's rather a participation that we have with the divine presence. And one of the things I love about this being part of our unity world is that I think this ties so powerfully into the unity teachings. The one presence, one power is that first principle. The second is that all the aspects of God the good, the infinite presence and power that's everywhere present, is within each one of us. So we just say, okay, check, that's a given, right? But then the next piece is this idea that the thoughts in mind produce after their kind. This is exactly what Eric Butterworth is telling us. We always have a choice. Whatever your choice is, from whatever state of consciousness your choice is coming, you're going to create the picture. So even if you do the right thing, but you're coming from fear, you're going to bring your fear, is going to be dragging along with you energetically into whatever you create. So it's so powerful for us to understand that, because when we're saying thoughts and mind produce after their kind, we're not just talking about the mental, we're talking about the full component. We're talking about the water too. We're talking about the emotional field that we carry, that state of inner peace, that state of inner connection, that place of knowing that we live and breathe in that field of higher consciousness, of super consciousness, with all things possible in every moment. So that law of mind action, what we might think of as the third principle, is such an important piece for us to really anchor in, because this is the principle all about choice. If we can start thinking, maybe you have something going on in your life where you have a decision that you need to make, to bring yourself back to that awareness. Oh, unity's giving me this kind of an active invitation to participate in a higher field, to really look at my thoughts. What am I thinking? What do I need to release in terms of this watery field of emotions? So it's very powerful for us to be aware of that. It's not what we're thinking, it's what's the level of consciousness. From what level of consciousness is that thought being broadcast or being spoken? Because Fillmore was all about the power of the spoken word, how we manifest with the power. The next one is the fourth principle. What's the fourth principle?
Meditation.
Prayer and meditation. How powerful is that? This is how we access that superconscious. We do that by going into the stillness and the quiet, and we'll take time to do that today. And, it's that awareness that the one who chooses may not be the one who's, crying out in the boat that they're afraid. It might not even be the one who's just thinking about stepping out. It's the one who knows that the faith is always there, that the capacity to step out and go for what they want is always possible. It's a different level. It's a completely different level for us to come from. And the fifth principle, I don't remember exactly how we say it's in our bulletin, but my whole thing in my mind is the fifth principle is basically, if we know all these things, if we know there's only one presence and one power, if we know that the divine is within you and me, if we know that the law of mind action, thoughts and feelings produce mind, the thoughts and mind produce after their kind, we've got prayer, we've got meditation to connect with God. If we know all that and we never do it, why bother to even know it? Really? It's just like, well, it's a book I read, but I don't remember anything about it. So the fifth principle is like the super thing. The fifth principle is like, okay, let's activate these principles. So what I gave you, and I put it in the bulletin too, and it's a little cheat sheet for you, is just some ideas of ways to literally intentionally align yourself with superconscious mind. So one would be to commit to a daily prayer practice or meditation. So, and what I'm going to say is, if you're already doing any of these, pick one that you're not doing. Don't go, oh, check, I'm already doing one. I'm done. One and done? No. The second one is just this idea of pausing before we speak or act. That is sometimes really hard for those of us who have a lot of opinions about things. But what a powerful thing to do, because that stillness and silence can really open you up to another possibility that you hadn't thought about. And maybe you're not going to say anything, which might be the divine choice in the moment. The third one is talk to someone. If you have an issue that is really troubling you and you're not feeling clarity, because we're talking about guidance, superconsciousness is our guide. If you're not feeling that clarity, find someone to talk to that can hold the high watch for you. I loved Mary Manning Morrissey because she was a minister years ago in a New Thought church up in Oregon, and she used to talk about, people would come to her and she would say, they would say, I just can't believe that I can do that. And her stance was, well, borrow my believing, because I can see that you could do it. So just borrow my believing. I tell my coaching clients that all the time, because they're like, oh, I don't think I can. Just borrow my believing. When that thought comes up, go, oh, hey, Patricia believes this. Find somebody that can hold the high watch for you. That could mean praying with Jeanette today back in the library, or calling Silent Unity, putting a prayer request in. Oh, I love this, number 4, resist the rush. Got to do it now. Don't have time. Rush. And, there's some affirmations here you can use. Let me center first. I trust divine timing. Trust divine order. And I love this. Even here, something sacred is unfolding. Can we know that? Like, even in those moments where things just don't seem to be going your way, there's something extraordinary, something sacred is unfolding there, and it's kind of like rooting around to see it. Not to deny that you might be having a challenge, but seeing that. And then number 6 is this idea of noticing your energy. It's an important thing. I talk about it often as the state of consciousness. In India, we talked about it as, are you in a stressful state, or are you in a beautiful state, non-stressful? Energetically, a stressful state is what? It's very contracted. You can find yourself when you're breathing just up here. You're in this sort of contracted, you can't see any possibilities. As opposed to an expanded state where you're not in a stressful, you're in a peaceful state, and you're connected to the explosion of superconsciousness. So that's a thing to bring that awareness, and then maybe it's time to go and do a prayer or do one of these other activities. And then find an affirmation. Anchor yourself in affirmation. Julia's like, check, check, check. Anyway, is there a typo?
Well, no, we thought there was two of the same halves, but was there a 6, 7, 8, 9,
No,
10? Oh,
no.
oh, it only has 5.
I'm just giving you some more.
Oh, no
Yeah,
problem.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
I just
no,
thought- okay, I
sorry,
thought
yeah,
it was
yeah,
a
yeah.
mistake. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no mistake, no mistake. Anyway, hopefully this brings us kind of back around to the whole idea of who chooses, and the idea that we really are always at choice. Pretty much, I mean, if you're going to go, there's pasta out there. You're going to make a choice if you're going to eat pasta today. Is there meat in it? There's meat. So see, I'm not going to because I'm a vegetarian. That's my choice. But that's based on my thing, right? But, you know, there's all day long, you're going to be making choices all day long. Hopefully you won't just be like, I've done this every Sunday. This is how I do it on Sunday. You know, but to be conscious of the choices. You know, maybe it's a day that you really feel like, hey, you know what? I really need to talk to one of my family members. I need to call my daughter or something, you know, just tune in and kind of feel what's underneath the choices that you're making today, both the physical things you do, the words you're going to speak, and the plans that you're making in consciousness, so that you're seeing the big explosion that is your amazing life. How fun is that? So just become aware, like who's choosing? You know, are you choosing from that place of your history and what's happened before, your habits? Are you choosing from that place of your wholeness, the fullness and the infinite possibilities that are yours? Or are you choosing from a place of suffering and pain? Are you choosing from a place of peace and calm and presence? Just become aware of this. You're choosing from a place of fear and scarcity. Are you choosing from that living spirit of truth and abundance, the Christ presence that's within you right now? So let's take time now and do a meditation. So I'm going to just put everything aside and going to invite lights out. Yeah. So just gently closing your eyes and relaxing in the body, just recognizing for a moment with the breath the deep presence of the divine within. And know that it is that divine presence, moment to moment, superconscious Christ presence, the Christ within, the one who chooses. So as you allow your body to relax more deeply, let your shoulders soften a bit. There's nothing to do right now, just relax, know where to go, know one to become. And just this moment, and just this breath. Just this sacred pause. And now just gently begin to notice what is moving inside me. Notice any thoughts that are present, any feelings. Notice any memories or any voices that might be stirring inside. And again, no need to judge or to fix, just notice what's stirring. And you might silently ask yourself, what am I carrying today? Where have I been choosing from habit or from old patterns or from a sense of fear? And just allow whatever arises to be in your awareness. And now bring your attention to the place of the heart. And just imagine that deep within you there's this light, this presence. There's a deep inner wisdom within you that's untouched by any fear, by any pain, any struggle. And breathe into that place within the heart. This is the Christ consciousness, the super consciousness, the Christ mind, divine mind, the living spirit of truth, whatever you name it. It is steady in you. It is loving. It knows the way. And gently within, affirm, there is a presence in me that knows. There is a presence in me that knows. I now align with infinite intelligence and love. I now align with infinite intelligence and love. I choose for the highest and best for all life. I choose for the highest and best for all life. And now just rest in the stillness, in the presence. You don't have to figure out anything. You don't have to do anything or solve any problems or decide anything. Just simply allow yourself to sit with the presence in your heart. Open, listening and trusting in the silence. Bringing your awareness back to your body, feeling the breath, being aware of the beat of your heart. And as you return, just silently ask, from this still place, what is mine to know? What is mine to choose today? And trust that even if you don't hear any clear answer yet, something has shifted. You're no longer choosing alone. You're choosing with the presence, with the divine, with the superconscious, the Christ light, the Christ mind. As you begin to come back, silently affirm to yourself, my choices bless the whole. I trust divine order and divine timing. I choose from wholeness, not from history. And taking a few deep and very conscious breaths. As you're ready, bring your awareness back into your physical body, feeling your fingers and toes. And as you feel guided, you can gently open your eyes.